The worst thing that can happen in the wild isn't being hunted. It's being marked for elimination. Because when a predator hunts, there are rules, patterns, ways to survive. But when a predator decides you are a threat to its existence, there are no rules anymore. You are no longer prey. You are a problem. And problems are solved with violence. In the Pantanal wetlands of Brazil, a jaguar emerged from the water at dusk. Not stalking, not hunting, walking directly toward a research camp with deliberate, measured steps. The researchers watched, frozen, as the jaguar stopped 20 meters away, made eye contact, and sat down. For 3 minutes, it simply watched them. Then it turned and walked back into the water. The wildlife team later realized something that changed everything they understood about predator behavior. The jaguar wasn't assessing them as prey. It was assessing them as a threat, and the reason it chose to confront them, instead of the dozens of other humans in the region, had nothing to do with vulnerability. If that moment sent ice through your spine, you understand what's about to happen. Because what researchers discovered about why jaguars sometimes choose humans is not what you've been taught about predators. It's darker, more calculated, more intelligent. And if you spend time in wild spaces, you need to know this, because the next 10 minutes could change how you move through the natural world forever. This is not a survival tip. This is a predator confession. The jaguar is the apex predator of the Americas. It is the largest cat on the continent, weighing up to 250 pounds, with a bite force that can puncture a caiman's skull. It is solitary, elusive, and by every measure, one of the most successful hunters on Earth. And here's what conservation researchers have documented across decades of study. Jaguars actively, deliberately, consistently avoid humans. In regions where jaguars and humans coexist, attacks are extraordinarily rare. Rarer than lion attacks in Africa, rarer than tiger attacks in Asia. So rare that when they do happen, wildlife officials investigate with the intensity of a murder case. But the mystery isn't why jaguars avoid us. The mystery is what happens on the rare occasions when they don't. By the end of this video, you will understand the neurological, territorial, and survival-based reason a jaguar sometimes chooses to confront a human. And it will reveal something about predator intelligence that contradicts everything we assumed about predation. The first documented case came in 2004 in the Beni Biosphere Reserve in Bolivia. A jaguar attacked a biologist who was conducting a census, not on the forest floor, but at a tree stand, elevated 30 feet above the ground. The jaguar climbed, deliberately, methodically, not with the urgency of a hungry predator, but with the focused calculation of something solving a problem. The biologist survived, but the attack pattern was unprecedented. Jaguars do not typically climb. They do not pursue prey into unusual heights, and they certainly do not expend energy on difficult-to-reach targets when the forest floor offers infinitely easier options. Then came the behavioral documentation. Rangers across jaguar habitat began reporting the same pattern. Jaguars that would observe humans for extended periods before either withdrawing or engaging. Unlike other predators that strike based on hunger signals, jaguars appeared to be evaluating something else, assessing something, making a calculation that took time. In 2016, a study published by the Jaguar Research Foundation analyzed every documented jaguar-human encounter over 30 years. The findings were striking. Encounters escalated when humans invaded core jaguar territory repeatedly. Humans hunted prey species the jaguar depended on. Humans moved with erratic, unpredictable patterns. Humans represented a resource or territorial threat. Attacks did not increase when humans were alone, injured, or vulnerable. The opposite of every predation model we understand. A jaguar in the Yucatan Peninsula stalked a hunter for 2 kilometers, not to eat him, but to drive him from its territory. When the hunter finally left, the jaguar stopped pursuing. This wasn't predation. This was something else entirely. Here's what neuroscience revealed about the jaguar brain. Unlike lions or tigers, which have evolved as social hunters with complex pack hierarchies, jaguars are solitary apex predators. Their entire neurological architecture is built around one principle: control their territory, secure their resources, eliminate threats to survival. A jaguar's decision-making process is not binary. It is not hungry or not hungry. It is layered. It calculates territory integrity. It calculates resource security. It calculates whether another living thing represents a threat to either. When a jaguar encounters a human in its core territory, and that human is hunting, or setting traps, or establishing a persistent presence, the jaguar's brain registers a threat signal, not to its immediate safety, to its long-term survival in that space. And here's where the mechanism becomes genuinely dark. A threatened jaguar does not flee, it does not hide, it confronts. Dr. Yuri de la Torre, one of the world's leading jaguar behavioral researchers, documented that jaguars approaching humans display what he calls threat-driven engagement, not predatory engagement. The body language is different. The approach speed is different. The decision-making timeline is different. A hungry predator strikes, fast, decisive, efficient. A threatened territorial predator investigates, evaluates, and escalates only if the threat persists. The jaguar in the Pantanal that sat watching the research camp for 3 minutes? It was making a calculation. Are these humans a permanent threat to my territory? When it determined they were transient, they would leave, it left first. But if those humans had been setting snares, hunting the peccaries the jaguar depended on, establishing a permanent camp in its core range, the calculation would have been different. The response would have been violence, not because the jaguar was hungry, but because the jaguar was protecting its survival. So here's my question for you, and I want you to really think about this before you answer. When a jaguar makes the decision to confront a human, do you think it's because the jaguar sees the human as weak prey, or because the jaguar sees the human as a threat it must eliminate? What's your instinct? Drop your answer in the comments, because what actually happens next is the complete opposite of what most people predict. And understanding that difference could literally save your life if you ever find yourself in jaguar territory. This is where the revelation becomes something more unsettling, because when we understand that jaguars don't hunt humans, they eliminate threats, it changes everything about how we interpret predator behavior across the board. A jaguar attack is not a predation event. It is a territorial defense event, which means it follows a completely different logic. A prey animal can sometimes escape a predator through speed, deception, or by making itself a difficult target. But you cannot escape a territorial defense. You cannot negotiate with it. You cannot appeal to hunger. There is no hunger to satisfy. Dr. de la Torre's research documented that in cases where humans were attacked by jaguars, the attacks were often preceded by months of escalating confrontations. The jaguar would appear. The human would react with fear and attempt to defend. The jaguar would withdraw, but return, again and again. Each encounter was the jaguar escalating its message. This is my territory. You do not belong here. Leave. When humans ignored that message, when they continued hunting, trapping, or establishing permanent presence, the jaguar moved from threat display to actual violence. The predator wasn't being aggressive, it was being patient, and then, finally, it was being efficient. This reveals something about jaguar intelligence that is genuinely profound. These solitary apex predators are capable of sustained, multi-encounter threat assessment. They do not strike in panic or hunger. They strike with calculation, with warning, with a decision made over time. A jaguar does not become a man-eater the way a tiger or a lion might, through desperation or injury or learned behavior. A jaguar becomes a threat only when humans become a threat to it. And that's a fundamentally different predator. That's an intelligent negotiator, one that communicates in the language of presence, territory, and escalating consequence. Most humans never learn to read that language until it's too late. There is a final chapter to the Pantanal story. The research team that the Jaguar approached, they changed their protocols. They moved their camp. They reduced their footprint in the Jaguar's territory. 6 months later, researchers reported that jaguars in that region had returned to their normal behavioral patterns, avoiding humans, hunting alone, thriving in the deep wetlands. The threat had been removed. The jaguar's message had been understood. What we learned from studying jaguar behavior is far more important than what we feared from it. Predators are not monsters. They are not malevolent. They are not even primarily hunters of humans. They are survivors in a world where we have become the dominant threat. When a jaguar chooses to confront a human, it is not choosing to hunt. It is choosing to defend. And understanding that difference, moving from fear to respect, from avoidance to coexistence, is what separates a human who survives the wild from a human who never truly belongs there. The jaguar doesn't want to kill you. It wants you to understand that you are in its home, and that understanding is where everything changes. Your patience to stay to the end of this story makes me glad, truly. You now understand something about predator intelligence that most people spend their entire lives never knowing. That knowledge is a privilege.